I think 25% of the questions I get from folks is how do I do StyleGAN2 training on Colab? And I've been pretty hesitant to dig into this topic for a couple reasons, but the most just being that I personally thought it was going to be annoying. I think it's like getting your machine shut off like every 8 to 12 hours seems really, really annoying, but you guys have been hounding me for it, so here we go. All right, so I wrote a Colab notebook that will basically do this for you. Let's walk through it, and you can try it out yourself. So you can head over to this URL. I'll dump it in the show notes, but if you come up here, already calling it a show notes, God. Anyway, so we now have a the notebook open. I'm just gonna come over here and I'm gonna, this is fine actually, this will be fine. Okay, so there's a couple things you need to know about this notebook and about this process. One is you pretty much have to have a Google Drive account. I don't really even recommend trying to do this with the Google Drive, with anything but a Google Drive account. I think you should also have a Google Drive account that has a pretty high space limit already, like a terabyte or more. Just because of it, just like you're going to create a lot of files using this process. And I don't know what the Drive default is these days, but basically, like, I'd say you need at least 100 gigabytes of place to store these files. Okay, so let's dig into this notebook. The very first thing you want to do is you want to connect your Drive account to your to the Colab. Actually, the very first thing you want to do is make sure your runtime is set up correctly. So coming over here to change runtime type, make sure you're in Python 3 and a GPU. And I probably recommend using Colab Pro if you want to spend $10 a month. I'll explain why in a minute, but basically, if you don't have this, then it doesn't matter. But for Colab Pro folks, use high RAM. Okay, save. And over here, let's connect to a runtime. Now that we're connected, let's mount our Google Drive. So I'm going to come in here, hit Shift Return in this notebook, run anyway. And the first thing you want to do, I think I've shown this many times, but you just want to connect these two. So you open this up, choose what Google Drive account you want. This happens to be the one that has has a large amount of space. I'm going to hit allow. You're going to then copy this code in, and you're going to paste it here. You're going to hit return. And it's going to take a second or two, but it's going to install this. Okay, the next thing is you're going to want to install the repository into Google Drive. So normally I would install the repository like directly here into Colab. I think just for my own sanity or for simplicity, like I would actually install it into Google Drive. I already have this installed, so I'm just going to change a couple names here. You don't want to do this, but for me, I'm going to do this just to make sure that like this will work. So let's do this. I'm going to hit Shift Return. All this is going to do is it's going to make a new folder in your Google Drive, and it's going to clone a fork of the StyleGAN2 repository, which is mine, into that folder, and then it's going to install a couple dependencies. Basically, there's a couple pickle files that I want you to have already to get this set up. So let's go ahead and hit Shift Return. So the very first thing you need to know is only run this once. So again, your machine is going to probably stop every 8 to 12 hours. You're going to need to rerun that. Skip this after you've run it for the first time. So for the very first time you want to run this, and then every time after you're going to want to skip this cell, and there's another cell down here that you want to use just for this. So I'll probably turn this into like a 2-part video. I'll do the first step and then I'll come back and show you how to do this again, how to pick up a training. So all of our content is being installed right now. So if I come over here, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's because I already made it there. Great. Okay, well, we don't need that. I need to update the notebook. Okay, so inside my Google Drive, you'll see there is now a folder called, what am I looking for? StyleGAN2 Colab. Mine happens to be called StyleGAN2 Colab Test because I already have a StyleGAN2 Colab. So I pull this down, and you will see inside of here are all of your StyleGAN2 files, right? Cool. I'll talk about this in a second, but basically when your machine shuts down, you want to come back. You don't want to reinstall this stuff because it'll probably break. You want to just CD back into that folder, and then probably do a git pull in case I make some updates to the notebook over time. The next big thing you need to remember is you want to be using TensorFlow 1. Colab has now moved to making TensorFlow 2 the default, which means you will get error messages when you run this if you don't set this. So this is a little magic command that works only for Colab, and it's going to set TensorFlow to version 1. Get a good little thing here. Okay, the next is that you need to convert your data set. So again, this is no different than what you do elsewhere. It's just you were doing it on Colab. So we're going to convert your data set. I happen to have a data set already in here, which is inside of my datasets folder. I have a folder called bird ouse, and then I've got this SQ square 1024, right? So this model that the my fork of this StyleGAN model still only works with square images. So make sure you are aware of that. Make sure you have your data set up properly. I'm going to use 1024. This model essentially, or like my setup here essentially assumes that you have 1024 by 1024 images. If you don't, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Just have 1024 by 1024 images. Let's do that. So let me just see if I have any other. I wonder what this crop is. Okay, so really quickly, screw it. Let's just use this one. I know it works. So we're going to copy this path. So the way this command works is you've got a dataset tool. These are not my dataset tools libraries. This is the one inside of StyleGAN2. You're going to use create from images, right, because you have raw images. The first thing you need to do is name your dataset. So the name of this dataset is going to be bird's ouse. And then you want to point it at your file. So I went over here, I copied the path for this, and I am going to paste this in, if it lets me. What's going on here? There we go. Momentary hiccup. So when you paste this path in, there's one thing you have to keep in mind. You'll see how there's a space here between my drive. You have to escape that character. So you're going to put in a backslash. One of the most annoying things about Colab and working with Drive, I don't know why they set it up like this, but they did. So this should be all set up. So what you're going to do is hit Shift Return. This is going to convert all of your images into the TF records file that it needs. I will say this is a very slow process compared to how I've done it directly. I think it's because Drive and Colab, like, they're kind of talking to each other, and this is pretty slow. You'll see it's not like terribly slow, but it's slower than I'm used to. So run this. While this runs, before I finish, I'm going to just walk you through how it will work. We'll come back to this as we go through it. Okay, so once this is finished, you'll be able to start your training. Now, the training command you can run this is the basic one, right? So I've already set it up. So make sure it's pointing to datasets. Make sure it's pointing to your dataset name, which in my case is bird's ouse or bird ouse. And then you've got mirror or augment true or not true. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. Or sorry, true or false. You could pass in false if you don't want to use left to right mirror augmentation. So the things that are important here is you have to make sure your data set matches the name that you passed in up here. And then you can choose this. And the last thing, which everyone has also been bugging me about, is about metrics. So there's a bunch of different metrics you could use within StyleGAN2. It defaults to FID 50K, which is the Frechet Inception Distance Score. This is what you might see inside a runway. This is what it defaults to. It's fine. My general rule of thumb is, like, for art and image making, metrics don't matter. Like, at the end of the day, like, you want to know if, like, by the eye test whether or not your images are good or not. Lots of people get hung up on this FID score, and the thing about an FID score is if you watch it like a boiled pot of water, like, all you're going to end up with is, like, over worrying about, like, oh, my FID score went up, and, like, who knows, it could go up for a while. Like, I've seen a lot of times where it goes up and up and up for, like, you know, a bunch of ticks, and then it starts to go down again. So, like, don't overthink it. In my experience, like, just use your eye test. If you want to set metrics, you can just, like, leave this empty and it will set it to FIDK, or sorry, the FID 50K. The other thing to know is that this takes a certain amount of time to actually process this number. So I think it takes about, on Colab, it usually takes about 25 to 30 minutes to actually run this command, because it's a lot of computational effort. That means, you know, you're running 30 minutes of time you could be training stuff on. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to pass in metrics none, which just basically says skip metrics. Let me check to see where we are with this guy. 40% of the way there. Okay. I might pause the video until this is finished and then come back, but we'll see. So these are about all the commands you need. I don't think there's really anything else that you should really worry about. There is also another metric if you want to use it. It's called ppl_w end. This is actually what StyleGAN2 recommends that you use. It thinks it's much more accurate. This command takes about 45 minutes to run on Colab. So again, it's like, are metrics really that important to you? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to try to do a longer video at some point about metrics because I think a lot of you are like way too concerned about metrics and not concerned enough about just like training this well. So we'll talk about that. I guess I'm going to wait a little bit longer for this to finish. So I'll be back in a second once this is finished recording or uploading or whatever this thing does. Okay, so this just finished. Took maybe another 5-10 minutes to do this, but basically I've converted all of my images from JPEGs or PNGs into the TF records format. So now I'm ready to run my training. So I described some of how these arguments work, but we're just going to come in here and hit shift return. And there's one really important thing to keep an eye on as this processes, is you want to make sure, waiting for it. Perfect, here you go. So you want to see that it's, if it's your very first time running this, that it's running, it's loading the network from this thing called network snapshot 10,000 PKL. Now that is FFHQ, and that is basically we're doing transfer learning. So we're going to start by learning off of this network, which is good. It's going to make everything go a little bit faster. So make sure you see this line. If you don't see this line, that's a problem. It means it's going to train from scratch, and you're going to be stuck training for an extra day or two. So this is running now. It's building our graph. I'll let this run for a little bit longer, and then I'll stop the video. Basically, what's going to happen now is you are going to let this run, and at some point in, say, 7 hours, 8 hours, maybe 16 hours if you're using Colab Pro. Mine got up to 19 hours, which is crazy. You can let this run, and until it stops, you're not, it's like training. So basically you let it train as long as you need to. Once it stops, you'll have to restart the training, and what I'm going to do is stop my video in a second, and I'm going to pick up like 8 hours, 10 hours later and show you how to pick up again from this point. So you'll see here now it's training for 2,500K images. It's going to start at 10,000K images because of that transfer learning. So essentially it's going to run for, you know, maybe another 1,500K images, but realistically, because we're using Colab, it's going to stop more frequently than that. So I'm going to let this run. I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to start the video again in like basically like assuming it was 12 hours, 18 hours, whatever. And I'll show you how to then run, basically how to restart this command in the same notebook using some of this new cell content. So I'll see you all, I guess, in like 12 hours or something. Okay, so I actually let this model train for a couple days, and let me sort of show you what you should expect to see in your drive when you go here. So I'm going to go into my StyleGAN2 folder inside this Colab folder, and you'll see in here there's just a bunch of files. What you want to look at are your results. So see, I have a number of different training systems here run. So each of these ran 18 hours, and then I stopped and restarted it. You might only have one if you just followed along with me. Inside of these folders, you'll see there are a bunch of different fake images and then your network files that are the pickle files. And all you want to do is just take a look at these and make sure they're looking okay. So if I double click on this one, let's see, it's showing some birds. They're a little weird looking, but it is working. So the next thing I want to do is I want to pick up from my training that's been stopped, and I want to continue training it. So again, for me, I've got a bunch of different folders in here. For you, you might just have one that's like 002 or 003. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up this Colab notebook again. We're going to check to make sure that our runtime types are all set correctly. Python, GPU, you might have high RAM, you might not, depending if you're using Colab Pro. You're going to hit save, you're going to hit reconnect. And the next thing we want to do is just go through the steps we need to do to get set up again. So the first thing we want to do is we want to connect to Google Drive. So I'm just going to go ahead and do these steps. So now remember, we already have the repo installed into, on our Google Drive folder, right? So we come in here and we go Drive, My Drive, and then we'll find, what is it, StyleGAN Colab? Yeah, StyleGAN2 Colab. Open this. You'll see in here, there's already a StyleGAN2 folder with all these files. So we want to skip this step. So remember, only do this if this is the first time you're ever setting this up. Now what we want to do is we want to look at the commands we need for picking up from our previous sessions. So we're going to click into this cell, and we're going to hit Shift Return. All this is going to do is it's going to move us into this Drive folder, and then it's going to do a git pull just to make sure there's no new updates to the library. You could comment this out if you want to, but just in case like I break things or add new things, it might be helpful to just do this because again, this is connected to my fork of the StyleGAN library. It says that it's already up to date, so we're ready to go. Next thing we need to do is make sure we're running TensorFlow 1. So again, Colab switched over to TensorFlow 2. StyleGAN is only written in TensorFlow 1, so we're going to make sure it's using TensorFlow 1. Now, again, I said you could convert your data set again. If you have a really, really large data set, like say 10,000 images or more, I might recommend rerunning this step. However, because my data set is pretty small and I've already run this step, I'm going to skip it this time. The reason you want to do it if it's really big is because this process randomly orders all the images, and you want to make sure your images are randomized enough so that you're not just running the same process over and over again on the same small subset of images. In this case, we're not. It's fine. So I'm going to skip this step, and I want to go back just to my training options. So I want to make sure that everything is matched up to what I was looking for. So it is, the number of GPUs is always 1. It is going to the dataset folder. I'm using config F. And I'm using that bird aus folder, right? So if I go back over here, you'll see this was bird aus. That was the name of my project. And I was using mirror augment true, so I'm going to keep that again. So I'm going to click in here, and I'm just going to hit Shift Return. And now there's one really important thing to make sure this is working the way I want it to. Is you're going to see a command here, and the thing I want to look for is I want to make sure that it's grabbing 008. I want to make sure it's grabbing from this folder and making sure it's grabbing the latest pickle file. So it looks like 10540 is the latest one. So this is going to do a little bit of work just to get set up. What did I say the number was? 10540. Okay. Sometimes this runner, it runs a little bit faster, sometimes it runs a little bit slower. This is sort of the fun of Colab. I usually find that this runs a little bit faster than this, but for now it's fine. Cool. So this is the important line. Loading networks from 008, that's the right one, and 10540. So we're doing the right thing. So the way this library is set up, it's set up to grab the latest pickle file. So again, as you do these trainings and when then it stops, you want to pick up from where you started again. So you'll see this is now running. It's going to start spitting out the network architecture, and then it's going to start to run. So at this point, I'm ready to just let this run again for 12 hours, 18 hours, whatever Colab allows me to do. An important thing to know is that you can't shut this tab. If you close this tab, it's going to stop that command from running. So you're probably going to have to leave this tab open, and you're going to have to leave your laptop open. So if you're running it on Colab Pro and you're going to get like 18 or 19 hours out of it, don't shut your laptop. As soon as you shut your laptop, you're going to lose everything you're working on, or at least it's going to disconnect. And if it disconnects, that's fine. You just run this process all over again, and it's going to pick up from whatever your latest snapshot is. Now, another thing to note is that I have this saving every 2 fake files. So if you stop at, like, say, 10535.jpg, and it doesn't generate a pickle, then they'll pick up again at this 10531. So it's generating off of whatever the latest pickle is. So you could lose an hour of training time or so if you stop it, or if it stops before you generate a pickle. It's just kind of the sort of guessing game of Colab. But whatever it was, you just want to make sure that it's picking up from the latest one. It's pretty hard to break that based on the way that this architecture or the code is written for this, but just double check. It's really important to do that. It might be that you added a new pickle file randomly from a different file or a different training session into here, and you don't want it to be picking up the wrong file. So make sure it's picking up the file you're looking for. It looks like this is now running. Again, this is just going to run for a while. You'll see it picks up from this number as well, so it's going to pick up at 10540. And this is set to train for 2500. Again, I don't really recommend that you train it for that entire length of time, but you might want to come in here and just look at what you're making. So this was, this is after a couple days of training, and you'll see that these birds are looking a lot more bird-like. So we're getting pretty close to where I want to be. I might just let this run on Colab for another day or two and then start to generate images with it. And I do have a video on how to generate images using Colab that I'll link to in the show notes for this. So I think that's it for Colab training. I honestly have to say it's easier than I expected it to be, or less annoying, especially with Colab Pro. And Colab Pro only costs $10 a month, and you'll get maybe an extra 6 or 8 hours every training session. So it's pretty nice. I was just letting this run. I would kick it off at my lunch hour, and then I would check on it the next morning, and it worked pretty well. So you'll see it's starting to spit out commands. I think I get one of these about every 30 minutes, it seemed like. So just keep an eye on this, keep your tab open, that sort of thing. If you do have questions about this, feel free to ask me in either my Slack channel or in the YouTube comments. No, I do not know how to get you longer time than 19 hours. That seems to be about my max on Colab Pro. So this is just how it works. Every day you're going to have to reset this, but it is free, so that's the big, huge benefit. Yeah, so I think that's about it. I'll see you on the internet.